Introduction to Office Software, Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Paint. Chapter 3, Microsoft Excel. An electronic spreadsheet is a program that allows users to manipulate information that's in cells laid out in a rectangular table. These cells typically contain numbers, often text, and often formulas for computing values that will be displayed in that cell. Spreadsheet users can adjust or modify values and observe the effects that the changes have on the calculated values. This makes the spreadsheet useful for what-if analysis. In many cases, can be rapidly investigated without manual recalculation. The term spreadsheet comes from spread, as with a newspaper or magazine that opens or spreads into two facing pages, with information extending across the centerfold, treating the two pages as one large page. The compound word spreadsheet has come to be used to describe the format used in bookkeeping ledgers, with columns for categories of expenditures across the top, invoices listed down the left margin, and the amount of a given payment in the cell where its row and column intersect. Ledgers traditionally used many columns, which required two facing pages or oversized sheets of paper, analysis paper. The ledgers were ruled into rows and columns approximately twice as wide as ordinary paper. The spreadsheet program in Microsoft Office is Microsoft Excel. The project in this chapter illustrate the construction of a spreadsheet that a professor might develop, create to track progress of students in a class and compute the grades for the students at the end of the course. To create the spreadsheet, we begin by finding and clicking on the Excel icon. This opens the Excel home window. We can create the new spreadsheet by clicking on the New icon on the left of the screen to open the Excel New Window page, which develops a number of options, displays a number of options for pre-formatted sheets. Sheets for calendars, budgets, and tutorials, schedules, reports, and other things. In our project, we select the blank workbook option. The columns in an Excel spreadsheet are identified by letters A, B, C, D, and when we run out of letters, they start using multiple letters A, B, AC. The rows are identified by numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Each cell is located in a column and a row. And so the cell can be identified by using a letter or pair identifying the column and a number identifying the row. For our example spreadsheet, let's assume that the class will have 5 quizzes and 4 examinations. Each score for a quiz and an exam will be stored in its own column. So we begin designing the sheet by entering identifiers at the top of each column. Name, quiz 1, quiz 2, quiz 3, quiz 4, quiz 5, exam 1, exam 2, exam 3, and exam 4. Name, quiz 1, quiz 2, quiz 3, quiz 5, exam 1, exam 2, exam 3, exam 4. Student names will be entered in the left-hand column in the column under name. Now you notice that the names don't fit in the space. They don't fit in the column. Or not all of them. To make this column wider so that all of the names do fit, we put the cursor on the divider between the A column and the B column, and the cursor changes from an arrow to a double arrow. Press the left mouse button, and drag the cursor to the right until the column is wide enough that all of the names will fit comfortably in the space provided for the column. Double arrow, left mouse button, drag to the right, and now the column is wide enough for all of the names. Now, we suppose that another student enrolls in the class. It's a student named Paloma de la Silla. Now we want our roster to display the students in alphabetical order. So Paloma should come between Edward Charles and Jeannie Fondue. To insert a blank row for De La Silla's records, we begin by selecting a cell in Fondue's row and in the Home ribbon, click on the arrow in the Insert icon, and in the menu, click on Insert Rows. Select a cell in Fondue's row in the Home ribbon. Click on Insert and Insert Rows. And now we have a blank row in between Charles and Fondue. Now that we have the blank row between Charles and Fondue, we enter Paloma de la Silla's name in the name column and the row, the new blank row. Now, at the end of the class, when the professor has to assign grades, he's probably going to be more interested in the average quiz scores and the average exam scores for each of his students than he will be in the individual scores themselves. So it's going to be natural to list averages at the ends of the lists of quiz and exam scores. But to do that, there has to be spaces to store these numbers. So we have to insert a new column with spaces for quiz averages in between the quizzes and the exams. To do that, we first select a cell in the column to the right of where we want the new column. A cell in column G, exam 1 column. Then, in the Home ribbon, click the arrow under the Insert icon and click on Insert Sheet Columns. This inserts a new column to the left of the selected column. Insert Sheet Columns. Here we have a new column and the exam moves to the right one spot. Now our new column needs a label, so we can enter average at the top of this column to identify the data to be displayed in that column. Of course, putting a label at the top of the column doesn't do anything for inputting averages into the cells in the column below that label. In order to get the spreadsheet to calculate the averages, we begin by selecting the G2 cell immediately below the average label and click on a little arrow to the right of AutoSum icon in the editing group of the home ribbon. That gives us a drop-down menu, and we'll select average. Select the cell below average. AutoSum average. This identifies the function average that's going to be calculated, but it doesn't identify the values that we're calculating the average of. In this case, the average of the 5 quiz grades that's going to eventually be entered to the cells on the left of that function. We place the cursor over the B2 cell, press the left mouse button, and drag the cursor over to the F2 cell and release the mouse button. B2 to F2. The B2 F2 entry indicates that the function is to calculate the average of all numbers found in the cells between B2 and F2. The values that the professor wants the averages of in the case of student John Abel. Average B2 F2. Average B2 F2. Since the function has now been set up correctly, we are computing the average of the quizzes that we want computed. Click the check mark, enter, in the box to the left of the function bar. Here, accept, and now we're calculating the averages of B2 through F2. Div 0 display in G2 is a division by zero error identification. The average function calculates a sum to be of the numbers to be averaged and divides by the number of non-zero entries. In this case, there are no non-zero entries. So computing the average involves division by zero. The error message will be eliminated, replaced by a number once the professor has entered at least one non-zero number, non-zero quiz score. Formula right now only calculates the average for John Abel, just one student. Clearly, professor wants the averages for all the students. So what we want to do is copy the function into all of the cells in column G that correspond to students. We place the cursor on a little dot at the bottom right corner of G2, and the cursor changes to a plus symbol. We press the left mouse button and drag the cursor down to the G10 cell and release the mouse button. Oops. Miss G. There. Click on any cell outside the range to accept the copied functions. Now we have average function in each of the entries for each of the G2 entries, G entries for each of the students. So the average function is copied into each of the cells, G2, G3, G4 up through G10. The values change for each copy to reflect the row of values that it's computing the average of. The copy of the formula in G3, for example, is the range of numbers from B3 through F3. In G5, it is B5 through F5. If a function references the contents of cells by column and row identifiers, then a copy of that function references cells with column and row identifiers adjusted according to the position of the new copy of the function. In the case of the quizzes, the original average function, G2, references other cells in row 2. The copy in cell G3 references cells in row 3. The copy in G4 references cells in row 4, and so on. The professor, of course, wants to calculate the averages of exams as well as those of the quizzes. So he's going to have to go through the same process to enter averages for exam scores in column L. Now, the professor might also be interested in the relative difficulty of his quizzes. To determine this, he would want to calculate the averages of the scores in each of the individual quizzes. To do this, we would start by entering a label in a cell in column A, A12. Then, with B12 selected, again we enter an average function. And then put the cursor in B2, press the left mouse button and drag it down to B10. Quiz average. Now, the average function. This function calculates the average scores, all of the scores in quiz 1. Next, we'll put the cursor on the dot on the lower right corner of B12, press the left mouse button and drag over to F12. So we're copying, again, the average function from one cell, B12, into the other cells between B12 and F12. Have to enter the new copies of the average function now have their column identifications adjusted, just like the quiz averages and the exam averages had their row identifications adjusted. Now we assume that the professor in this course has decided that the quiz average should count as 10% of the final grade in the course. The exam average would be counted as 90% of the final score. He needs a function to compute the final course grades, 90% exam, 10% quiz. Of course, there's not going to be a built-in function like average to calculate 10% plus 90%, but Excel lets us create our own new functions. To do this one, select a column for the course average and enter the appropriate label. Then, in the cell just below it, we will enter equal 0.1 asterisk G2 plus 0.9 asterisk L2. Equal 0.1 asterisk G2 plus 0.9 L2. Oops. 0.9 asterisk. L2. Notice we have the formula bar 0.1 asterisk G2, 0 plus 0.9 asterisk L2. Now, when the content of a cell begins with an equal symbol, what follows is a formula or a function. And it's the value that this formula or function produces that is displayed in the cell. Is now we notice in our average functions, the content starts with an equal, the average of. In the formula or function in a cell, the numbers from other cells are referenced using column row identifications of the cells, and the arithmetic operations are identified using plus for addition, minus for subtraction, asterisk for multiplication, slash for division. In our example, we created a function, the equal sign, followed by a formula calculating 0.1 times the number stored in G2 plus 0.9 multiplied by the number stored in cell L2. The entry begins with a symbol, the equal sign, which means it's a formula or function. It multiplies the number in the G2 cell by 0.1, 10% of John Abel's quiz average, and the number stored in L2 multiplied by 0.9, that's 90% of John Abel's exam average. It adds the two products. Now, when we finished entering the number, the formula, we clicked on the enter check mark to finish or confirm. Now we've created a function for calculating John Abel's final grade. We can use that to create functions for the final grades for all of the other students. We'll just, in the same way that we have done before, we copy the function into the rows corresponding to the other students. Copying by dragging down changes the row numbers in the functions. When we copied from left to right, we changed the column identifications in the functions. If we wanted all of our copies to reference a specific column, we would put a $sign next to the left of the column identifier in the function definition. If we wanted it to reference the same row number, we could put a $sign to the left of the row number in the function definition before copying. With the $symbol next to a reference, this locks the value so that it does not get adjusted when making copies. After the professor enters quiz and exam grades, at the end of the semester, the spreadsheet might look something like this, with numbers in your average column, in the exam average column, course average column, and of course, quiz average row. The process of saving an Excel spreadsheet is the same as for saving a Word document. If it's been saved previously and we're saving the revised copy with the same file name, just a few different grades, we click on the Save icon. If the spreadsheet has never been saved, or if we want to save the current version with a new name to differentiate from earlier versions, then we begin by clicking on the File tab and selecting Save As. File, Save As. From the Save As column, we can navigate to the directory where we want to save the new file and enter a name. Where's my Where is my browse? Not in Documents. I want to save as work files, Office software, PowerPoints, Chapter 3. Now, Demo 1. Save.